Three Bros Podcast, episode number 5. I apologize, it's taken a while to get put up. Unfortunately, I came down with COVID and couldn't get anywhere near my equipment, but here we go. In episode number 5, we talk about the comments made by Dominique Foxworth about Josh Allen, our sports politics free, and how humanity takes a long time to learn. Check us out on Twitter at 3BrosPod to continue the conversation and see what else might be coming down the pipeline.
Three Bros Podcast.
Where everybody gets butthurt when Cyril's matter of fact. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, when Cyril shoots from the hip and almost certainly misses, but that's beside the point. This week on the Three Bros Podcast, we are discussing Dominique Foxworth. And I am not really of the sports world. I'm a very tepid man as far as my interests.
Sports, right?
Yeah. Well, definitely the ESPNs.
Right.
But as far as I understand, Dominique Foxworth is not a on-air kind of guy.
Sometimes.
Is that correct?
Not really.
He's a commentator. He commentates.
Were you guys
on,
correct?
Were you guys familiar with him before this story?
Yes,
Okay.
but I watched a lot of this shit. So yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm sitting in my break room at work. I work at a fairly conservative-leaning place, and somebody just pokes their head in, and it's this guy that's a Bills supporter. He knows that I wear Bills gear sometimes, so I'm somewhat part of that herd, and he goes, "Oh, did you hear that commentator? He's talking about how he doesn't like Josh Allen because people who support him have flags and crossbones as their profile picture." I was like, "Oh no, I didn't really hear about it." He's like, "Oh, you probably will. You'll come across it. You'll come across it on your feed today." It's like, "Oh yeah, that's crazy, man." One of those very shallow conversations, but that piqued my interest because.
When was this for you?
This was like 2 weeks
remember
ago.
around?
About 2 weeks
really?
ago,
Okay.
probably. Maybe a little longer than that. Well, because the podcast itself came out on like December 10th or something like that. So anyway, so I was like, well, this might be interesting just to see as just a topic to discuss because A, I have no idea who any of these people are, and B, it's weird when like politics and sports sort of collide, at least as far as I understood, but maybe hearing you guys talk in the preamble, it seems it's a little more common than I realized. But so essentially, Bomani Jones, who is some sports journalist, has a podcast called The Right Time, I think it is. And there was an episode with Dominique Foxworth called Truth Telling on Josh Allen. And essentially they open the conversation with like a reference to Twitter the whole issue seems to be revolved around like sort of just conversations on Twitter, essentially, as far as I understood. And Bomani Jones was saying that he gets a lot of flack, and his words, not mine. He says a lot of people, about 95% white, think that Bomani Jones and Dominique Foxworth are just like they're unnecessarily hard on Josh Allen, and Bomani Jones is essentially. He's saying that when he sees Josh Allen playing well, he gives him credit when he sees him playing well.
Wait, that's not Bomani.
Yeah, that's Bomani.
I thought that was Dominique saying that.
Yep. Dominique Foxworth's.
Yeah.
As far as I understand. Okay, I did take explicit notes when I listened to the podcast. To be fair, I could be wrong.
From the article you shared, this is a stupid comment for Dominique Foxworth to say.
This is I'm giving the greater context to where the conversation started. Essentially,
I take
it was on Bomani's podcast.
It was on Bomani's podcast. Yes,
Chad, I take that back.
That's what you're saying. That's correct.
And you're right. You're setting it up correctly. My apologies.
That's all right. Yeah, so the greater context is essentially they're talking about how there's this group of people on Twitter who are unapologetically pro Josh Allen. And Bomani Jones was discussing how when Josh Allen isn't doing well, when he's making straight up dumb decisions on the field, that same group of people they won't criticize them. But he's saying, listen, I give Josh Allen, I give him the credit when he's actually playing well. And this is where Dominique Foxworth kind of chimes in, and he's like, you got a way better resolve about this than I do. And this is where it's like, it sort of dips into the weird...
But I gotta stop you, Chip, just real quick.
Sure.
You know Josh Allen's tweets from his teenage years, right? This is why Dominique says what he says. There's context there.
Yes.
Yeah, let's let
okay.
set it up, and then Cyril, you go into his tweets, especially before the draft. Those came out, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, and I'm not saying it's fair to criticize that stuff, or I'm just saying like
it's part of the conversation. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. Right. So this is the exact quote from Dominique Foxworth. And he says, I am fully aware that I have biases, and my biases are not based on Josh Allen. It's based on the people that are defending Josh Allen. I would be 100% lying if I said that when Josh does something dumb, a little part of me doesn't get happy. And it's not because I don't want Josh to succeed. It's because the people who are telling me that Josh is the second coming and Josh is better than everybody are people with American flags and dogs and skulls and crossbones. I imagine he's talking about like their avatar on Twitter or whatever it is. And he says, if you just take a dip into their tweet history, there's some concerning retweets and likes. It's not about Josh. So he's talking a little bit more about people that are diehard Josh Allen supporters, and he doesn't have as much patience as Bomani Jones does when he's seeing these people on Twitter. So he likes to dunk on Josh Allen, essentially, because of the people that are supporting him and like their political affiliation.
Because of what he tweeted is what he's thinking.
Right. And to be fair, I did not know about this. When I was sort of doing a little bit of reading concerning all of this, he does actually bring up some tweets that were in his past. Cyril,
Correct.
Do you have like any specifics? I have no idea what those tweets are.
I don't want to read these tweets.
Oh,
but
that
I will replace a word with fellas. It starts with N.
What word? Okay, sure. Neighbors.
Go ahead. Allen tweeted the N-word multiple times when he was a 16-year-old. I don't think you fellas want a troubled son. Next tweet. Fellas trying to get at me. Next tweet. About to show up these fellas at Pong. Next week. So and
definitely concerning for sure.
Well, I am willing to go 100% real talk on this recording and say,
sure,
I am not a perfect person with what I've said in my life. I think all of us can say that actually. And so the context of Josh Allen having these tweets when he's 16 is important. The context of his career so far, has he done things in ways to amend his character since then? He has. He's done a lot of great things for Buffalo. He just raised $500,000 for the Children's Hospital here in Buffalo after his grandma passed away in the last year. I live here in Buffalo.
Over 700,000.
Whatever it was a lot of money.
Last count, yeah.
I think this goes back to, and I think we all feel a type of way about this. We've never talked about this, I don't think, but this goes back to like just the danger of social media and young kids and thinking about what I did as a young kid and what I may have said to my friends in private. And it can be tricky. So I guess I should let Chad keep going, but before I do, I'll say this. This is a little scatterbrained, but I understand where Dominique Foxworth is coming from, but he worded it poorly. Take it away, Chad.
So, and I'll say this real quick. Ultimately, I think that people who really are upset about this are a little more snowflakey than they might be willing to admit to. That's just like my, like, I don't know, just overall opinion. I think, yes. I mean, are you really bothered by these comments? Really?
Right.
And like, to me, somebody that would get real bothered about these kind of comments, which are, you know, I could see where like you might be upset, but they're tepid compared to probably the president you support. So it's weird to see that uneven, handedness when you're talking about potentially suggestive comments.
interestingly enough, you see Clay Travis kind of go off on this. And funny enough, me and Caleb talked a little about this the other night, just pre-prodding it. And Clay Travis has gone on CNN and said outlandish things as well. I guess, he went on CNN and said that his two favorite things, what did he say, Caleb? His two favorite things of America are the freedom of speech and boobs. And he said that on CNN.
Oh my God.
So for him to be like tone policing, it's just so, it's the height of hypocrisy. It's the height of hypocrisy. As with anything, both sides can be a little right, and I could even tell you why both sides can be a little right. But it's just so ridiculous that Clay Travis is the one to deliver this.
I get tired of selective outrage because if you're not consistent, you're just being manipulative. And I don't
They're
waste
just words to
time
Clay Travis. That's what he says. When I say boobs, they're just words. Well, why aren't these just words?
Sure. It's funny because I didn't know who Clay Travis was, but I have seen the clip that you're talking about, so that's incredible.
Go ahead, Gil.
So let me start with Foxworth and the way that he addressed Bomani in their conversation. Number one, you have to give credit where credit is due. He literally said, I know my biases. Like, he was like, I know that I'm biased. This is why I'm biased. And he's owning it. So the fact that, first and foremost, anybody who has any sort of platform, any sort of, punditry, whether it's in sports, politics, or what have you, for them to acknowledge and own their bias outright is, hey, props to him 100%, because I don't know that I can always do the same thing he did, is acknowledge it and then address it from there. The thing that is unfair, and the thing that I think a lot of people are kind of up in arms about, is that you're judging and basing potentially your observation and criticism of a sports athlete based on the people who may or may not support him. Now, from a sports perspective, that's ridiculous. Like, your job as a commentator is to give me the insight as to why this guy is better than this guy, or this girl is better than this girl, or this team is better than that team. If you have those type of biases, there's no way you're going to give me the appropriate sports commentary on it. Last but not least is what Chad was just saying, and you were saying, Cyril, like, just the ridiculousness and the double-sidedness of people who are in fact snowflakey, who want
outraged.
To go after, they want to go after somebody like Dominique and be like, well, how could you do that? Like, no, come on. You're just you're playing the game. He won the game because you're mad. That's what it is.
Even if you recognize that Dominique could have said it better, there's so many things Clay could have said better. So
there's so many things that Donald Trump could say better.
Standing on that's not wrong, but
it's relevant. It's the same crowd. You know that it is.
It is the same crowd. It is the same crowd.
Same exact
same
crowd.
where he tries to stand on these principles when it works for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, but when I don't give a shit and I'm speaking to my base, I can do whatever I want. It's like, no, dog. Like, you can't. Like, that's
Just to be clear, if you were to, and again, you kind of have to listen to the whole podcast, and I was actually surprised about how much race was factoring into this podcast. I was like, it was like the whole podcast, not the whole podcast. I would say 60% of the podcast was sort of in a race context, right? And
I think that's part of their even though they're sportscasters, that's part of their podcast too. It's like about race too. There's like,
it's
fair
from the perspective of race, because you have to realize too, Chad, that a lot of people who consume sports, especially anything other than basketball, right? Technically, or more so, have a primarily white dominated field. So what Bomani and the guests that he brings on bring to the table is a different perspective than most people have when it comes to sports. That's what he's good at.
No, that's fair.
And he's a great commentator as well.
Well, later on in that same podcast, Dominique Foxworth talks about, because he's a former NFL player, and he talks about being in a coaches meeting where they were talking about playing against Byron Leftwich, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Byron Leftwich, yeah.
And apparently he thought it was hilarious because the coaches were discussing like QB spy options, because the assumption is, oh, it's a black quarterback, he's fast, he's going to run it. And he thought it was hilarious because Byron Leftwich was not a fast man, was not a running quarterback.
Yeah.
So like, when you talk about contexts like that, I totally understand why race is a valid part of the conversation, because there are those prejudices, like, and that's a very, like, I mean, if anything, you're hurting yourself if you're putting, if you're wasting manpower on a QB spy when that quarterback's not going to run it. But
I just tell you those coaches didn't do their homework.
They clearly did not do their homework. Well, it's interesting because another thing that they discussed, and both of them did, both Foxworth and Jones, they were talking about the contrast between the support that Josh Allen is getting now, having come right after Tyrod Taylor starting last year. And they think that the amount of support that's surrounding Josh Allen now has a racial implication because it's a response.
I don't know.
That was part of the conversation later on in that podcast. I didn't think about that. I don't know how true that is. I just thought that was an interesting point. Do you guys think there's any validity to that point?
Even if I wanted to have an opinion on if there's validity or not, I don't have any proof for you, so I can't.
Sure.
I can't say one way or the other.
Here's the thing.
I don't think that's.
Yeah,
well, I'm more on.
I don't think that's the thing, and I'll tell you exactly why. When Tyrod Taylor played, yes, we made the playoffs, but he was injured. So most people didn't attribute that full playoff run to Tyrod Taylor, which, by the way, we backed into the playoffs in 2017. Mm-hmm. He was then moved to the Browns, who he then was replaced by Baker Mayfield. And then he went to San Diego, he was injured. I don't know if you know this, Chad, but he had a collapsed lung from a doctor who was giving him an injection, a medical injection, and collapsed his lung.
Oh my
10 or 15 minutes before the game. That happened this season.
And he lost his job to a rookie. And he lost his job to a rookie.
And here's the thing is that Tyrod, I liked Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor played mistake-free football, but what he wasn't able to do was he was not able to go out and win you the game. He was not a fourth-quarter quarterback that would get out there and win you the game, go get you that game. He was a game manager.
You won or lost with the rest of the team. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was the game manager. He was good at that. So to make that connection to say, oh, there's a racial implication. No, he wasn't that good of a quarterback. People aren't going to come out and support somebody who's not winning games, who's not exciting, who's not in the MVP conversation. Tyrod Taylor would make some nice runs. He'd make a few nice underneath passes, but that was about it. And it showed now in two other franchises. When he went to the Browns, same thing. When he went to the Chargers, you're not going to get that type of fan base if you're not exciting. And the other thing I would point to is there's Patrick Mahomes. Even before, like with Cam Newton, there's plenty of African-American quarterbacks who have been exciting, who have gotten support, who have gotten their fan bases behind them, but that's because of the quality of their play, not because of the color of their skin.
I was going to say, and they're, again, with a very specific crowd of people, that might be a factor. But I've been to, plenty enough Bills games to know that regardless of what you are or what you look like, if you could bring the Bills to a Super Bowl, they're going to worship you.
Yeah, they don't care.
They don't care.
Yeah.
People were talking about keeping Tyrod. People were at that time. They were like, "Well, why would we get rid of Tyrod?" He's a serviceable backup quarterback. He's good. He knows the system. He's been here. Why would we get rid of him?
Right.
Ultimately, I think it was because he was asking for too much money and they didn't want to re-sign him. But there were people, and I listened to. I don't know about Cyril, but for me here in the local area in Rochester, I listen to sports radio almost every single day in the afternoon when I'm driving home. Because it's like a brain killer,
that's fair.
Work all day, I just want to listen to something that really never will impact me, so I don't care. That was the largest part of that conversation with Tyrod. Nobody hated Tyrod. He just wasn't going to win you a Super Bowl.
He wasn't delivering, yeah.
Right, that's all.
So, and the last comment that came well after the initial comments that are usually cited in most of the articles I found, Dominique Foxworth says, there's so much that I like about Allen. There's so much that I like that he does that I love about Josh Allen. He says, I just wish a certain group was not so into him. Which, again, it's a weird comment to make, but considering the political climate, I don't think it's totally unfounded. But, Caleb, to what you were just saying, and this is something that I was thinking of when I was sort of just reviewing all of this. I support Kaepernick's right to kneel during, the national anthem. I understand what he's doing, but I'm kind of the opinion that American culture needs a place where everybody can come be an American together. You need a place culturally that is just outside of politics. So I don't know how I feel about crossing these lines.
But whose fault is that we can't have that why can't we have that everywhere? Why can't we just respect opinions and let people have their opinions, but also have that everywhere?
It's not going to happen. No, well.
But whose fault is that? It's our fault. We can't handle each other. That's on us. That's not on Colin Kaepernick. That's 100% not on Colin Kaepernick.
No, it's not. It's not.
Right.
I'm saying I think there's value in having a cultural space where everyone can be culturally together, regardless of their political leanings. I think it's really healthy to have that. I think football was that, and I understand players utilizing their platform because, like, you can get your message to a bunch of people who probably wouldn't hear it otherwise. I totally get that, and I support your right to do it. But I think there's a lot of value in having a political-free cultural space where we can all just sort of have a cultural event together. Do you know what I mean?
I know where you're coming from, but what does that mean? What does that look like to you? Nobody's apolitical. So if you don't respect other people's opinions, we can't have that. We literally can't have that. So what does that look like to you? Do you have any ideas as to like what that could look like, what that means to you?
It means
obviously violence is unacceptable, but what words and opinions are what they are.
When you have like woke culture, sort of.
Go ahead.
Listen, I'm not saying I'm not supporting these movements. I'm not saying I'm not supporting people using their platform, but I think that there might be a lot of value in having a cultural space for people to just be together. Because if we don't have sports, what do we have? What space do we have where people aren't like interjecting a little bit of the politics? And the politics is so toxic that it just poisons everything.
But that's on us.
Chad,
go ahead,
Chad, if I could argue, like that's always had a place in sports, though, even all the way back to like the 1932 Olympics. Like
always, man.
Sport has not been like as clean as you're making it out to be. Sport has always been a platform for people of different nationalities and ethnicities and religions and genders and whatever, what have you, to all get together and watch an event, and that is the most impactful place to send a message. I mean, think about how it was.
Because we all congregate there. Because everybody congregates there.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's the point of having that. Yeah, I mean, you look at.
But if you make it so political, do you get to a point where it doesn't transcend, where it's not ubiquitous?
But why is the national anthem sung at football games then? We made it political. I understand where you're coming from, Chad. But what I would say to you is, we should have that all the time by respecting each other's difference of opinion.
Right,
we still have a life to live and a society to be happy in. Well, then I don't agree with what you're saying, Chad.
You're coming from this perspective that it's been as clean as you're making it.
No. I'm not saying that. I mean,
there was the tennis match, right? The who was that? Billie Jean King tennis match, a man versus a woman. There's been
black gloves raised.
There's so many.
Like you said, Caleb, a black guy slapping Adolf Hitler in the face with gold medals. Like there's been tons of examples.
Again, how about Muhammad Ali?
Jesse Jackson. Shout out to Jesse Jackson.
Right.
The stance that he took for Vietnam. No, I am not going to fight a white man's war. That's literally what he said. Like, so for
Jackie Robinson, Chad? Not Jesse Jackson.
Sorry. Anyway,
Jackie
sport has never been that clean. Sport has always been a place for someone to voice their opinion. And the fact of the matter is, to me, Chad, is a lot of the times most of the time, I should say, we respect that person's opinion more because they're typically people who did not come from wealth. They did not come from this insane background where they had everything. They're not completely disconnected from reality. So they tend to be able to make that message a little more direct and a little more clear than anybody else could. So although for me, when it comes to Kaepernick, I 100% support his right to kneel. The idea that other people would get upset about that, I mean, they have the right to be upset about that. Sport is not a place exclusively for sport. It has always been I mean, if that were the case, then why would the NFL or the NBA or MLB or any of these NHL would have all these charities that they donate to? That's just
to Caleb's point. Take most African Americans that have achieved greatness in sport in America over the years, a lot of them, like Caleb said, came from poverty. Think about a world where nobody gave a crap about sports. They have no power. Now they have this power because we love the sport. We watch the sport that transcends the typical old wealth is power and religion is power.
Yes,
this transcends that.
It's ubiquitous.
And they're using this platform. Right.
No, I get it. But it seems
no,
to me
and I know you do on that. Yeah.
Did you guys watch the Michael Jordan documentary recently about the?
Wait, real quick, if I could just say.
Yeah.
We have our first on-air fact correction because I said Jesse Jackson, which is obviously stupid. Cyril said Jackie Robinson, which was an MLB player. Jesse Owens.
Jesse Owens.
Oh, Jesse
was
Owens.
Was the Nazi Germany. Okay, I just want to correct that real quick because we're ignorant white folks.
Carl Lewis. Who's Carl? Go ahead, Gil.
Carl Lewis came later, but either way.
Yeah, go ahead.
He may come later. Go ahead, Gil.
Did you guys catch any of the Michael Jordan documentary of
the
1990s that was on it? One of the things they hit on, and one of the things that I, surprisingly to me, being a white man in America, didn't really realize, is one of the things that actually tarnished Michael Jordan's legacy to some degree is the fact that he never took a stance for black people. He never once did anything specifically outlandish, outright, out forward that, and a lot of people in the African American community criticized him for it. And the thing that he rebutted with was, well, white people buy Jordans too, so.
Yeah, and that was a part of the documentary.
Wait,
and
he said
even
that?
at the time that was he did.
Jordan said that explicitly?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
so look,
damn.
That's
tough.
don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
We gotta, as a white man myself, we're all brothers, so we're all white, right? Well, that's not how that works, but
I've got a little Indian in me.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Look, people are allowed to live their lives the way they want. I don't necessarily agree with the idea that like you have an inherent obligation to service a group. I don't know. The libertarian in me rejects that a little bit. The libertarian in me says like, no, I don't think so.
Well, and he kind of has a point when he says white people buy Jordans too, because, and let's be real about this, if he did take a stand, he would lose some business. I don't know what percent of business that would be. I don't know how sensitive racial tensions were at the time that comment was made. Do you know when that comment was made, Caleb?
I think he made that comment well after his career. No, I think it was well after his career.
No, it
2000?
Was it? Okay.
Hang on, let me Google it for you.
Yeah, let's because and I agree with you, Cyril. Nobody's obligated to, go to bat for a cause, especially if somebody just doesn't feel like they're geared to do so. Like, just because you're a great, athlete doesn't mean you necessarily are involved with the nuances or you're well spoken enough to have an opinion that would be convincing to people. Like, that's not an obligation. I could see why people would get upset, but
the thing I think I appreciate about athletes, though, Chad, is that when they make that type of a statement, it is a direct statement and a poignant statement. Whereas most of the statements that we are used to from our politicians or from, maybe even religion like clergy or something like that, it tends to dance around an issue. It's blah, blah. Whereas an athlete, a Kaepernick, saying, no, you guys are brutalizing and killing and systematically oppressing black people. Even today, I will take a knee for it. That's extremely direct.
Let me ask you something.
That's right. Wait. Can I correct the record real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
He did not say that. There was a 1990 North Carolina Senate race that was heated between a white and a black man. The team, or the black man who was running as a Democrat in North Carolina Senate race, reached out to the Jordan team for an endorsement. Jordan says he never heard about it. He only heard about it when his mother asked him to do a PSA for him. And he told his mother, look, Mom, I'm not speaking out of pocket about someone I don't know, but I will send a contribution to support him, which is what I did. Go ahead.
How did that get so wildly... I'm confused what you even Googled to find that, first of all. Second of all, how we went from, like, something that he may have said behind the scenes
let me say
privately to, like, an explicit quote that he said out loud. That's wild.
So there you go.
Two fact checks this podcast.
You did hear from the documentary, Caleb. It was a part of the documentary, but I do remember, and I was with you, Caleb. I thought this is what gets muddled after you watch it. I watched it like last spring. It was a part of the documentary, and the words were said in the documentary, which is probably why we remember it. But I do remember the story being Jordan saying, I never said that. He still maintains that to this day. And listen to this quote before we continue. Jordan said in 1998, I never thought of myself as an activist. I thought of myself as a basketball player. I wasn't a politician. I was playing my sport. I was focused on my craft. He even said after that, was that selfish? Probably, but that was my energy. And like, I can't hate that. Go ahead.
I can't hate that either, honestly. And I get why people would be upset because, like, you know, he does have a platform. He was one of the greats.
Right. We can understand why people would be upset, but I can't hate it.
Nobody has an obligation. I mean, I just...
Correct.
And I'm clearly wildly, you know, I'm not part of that community to have an opinion, really. But, I mean, I can't blame the guy. I genuinely can't.
Like,
yeah. So it looks like that
you want to fight for it, you got to fight for it. Go ahead.
Let me keep going. It looks like that phrase actually was Republicans buy sneakers too, and that came from a book that was written by Sam Smith in 1995 called The Second Coming.
That's right.
Chronicle of Jordan's return from minor league baseball to the Chicago Bulls.
And he was in the documentary
never actually confirmed, but it was written.
Oh, I see. Secondhand.
Secondhand, right?
And the comment specifically is Republicans buy. Sorry. Finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say specifically what he said was Republicans buy Jordans too.
Allegedly, he said.
Allegedly, yes. Understood. Got you. Interesting how they got bastardized.
Yeah, I mean, even by me, I watched the damn thing.
We got fake news, bro. That's fake news right there.
Hey, but we corrected it.
We did correct it. Wow, we've had several fact checks on our podcast live on air. God bless. Look at us go.
It does very much relate to that article. It all is an all-encompassing thing. Like,
so yeah. I don't know. And again, I definitely wasn't claiming that, you know, sports has always been politics free. I think it probably largely has gone politics free. Just, you know, for the most part, people are showing up and playing ball, but there are definitely moments where politics were interjected. My only point was, I think there's value to having a common cultural thing that most people participate in, and it's not partisan. It has nothing to do with politics. It's why I'm somebody who explicitly will tell you I'm not religious, I'm not Christian, but I will tell everybody Merry Christmas. I will participate. I'll take, because it's a cultural thing. It's a central cultural thing that gathers us together. Like for better or for worse, cultures are defined by the rituals that they can all share together. And if we have rituals that are just, and again, like the politics of today is a special breed of just toxic politics. So, you know, when we're talking about times, well, I don't want to comment on the past, but my point is like, I don't know, we just need a space where we can all get together and it's not even a thought in our minds. That would be nice.
We can do this about the past. Why do we feel? Because I would say that at one time, even now, there's a part of me that feels the same way you do, Chad, in the sense that like it used to be less partisan. Why is that? Ask yourself why. The answer isn't because humans were less partisan back in the day. It's because humans could communicate less. Let's tie this back to the article.
Sure.
Josh Allen had the ability to tweet at a 16-year-old age. Michael Jordan didn't. Everybody else didn't. These new athletes, this new era we're in is mass communication. Partisanship has always been and will be. It's just that now people can blare things out and they're easily found. That's the difference.
Well, once they gain a certain status, there are plenty of people willing to just comb through their history. But
what did Michael Jordan say when he was a kid? Maybe he said, F those white people across the tracks. We don't know. Right.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what I take away from Dominique's opinion is that, number one, I give him credit that he acknowledges his bias, but number two, unfortunately, as a sports commentator, it takes away your ability for me to believe that you are being unbiased about your commentary and your analysis of sports.
Right. So in that sense, Caleb, you might agree with me when I say you admitted your bias, which I do appreciate, just like you, Caleb. But I'm still going to say, even though you still did all the right things with your opinion here, when I hear specific sports takes that might mix in a little bit, I do now have to question it and think about where you're coming from. Yeah, I agree with that.
So when I watch him later on Get Up on ESPN with, what is it, Mike Greenberg or whoever, and Rex Ryan is on there and a couple other commentators, when you sit there and you say that the Bills are not going to make the Super Bowl or they're not going to be able to beat the Chiefs, are you saying that because you have done work and done an analysis that shows that there are flaws in the Buffalo Bills game that will not translate to beating Kansas City? Or are you saying that because you just don't want Josh Allen to succeed?
And I will say, and again, I came into this not knowing anybody involved. I didn't know ESPN had podcasts. Which is
kind of nice.
So many of them.
So many. Go ahead.
As far as I could tell, both of these guys, they're smart and they know what they're talking about. I think when they're discussing what they discussed here that they got in trouble for, they're talking about exchanges on Twitter and a little bit of that political toxicity that, you know, nobody can escape these days. It infects everything. You can't ignore it. Ultimately, it's like it's a podcast. These guys are probably still pretty objective at their jobs, and people that really are upset about this need to evaluate how thin their skin is. I'm not gonna lie, it's like if you were saying some of this stuff on air, okay, but a podcast is more laid back, it's more open discussion, it's more being honest, it's not the focus of ESPN.
Yeah, and you're right. Let me flip the script though. Sure. If it was a white commentator,
I agree.
Saying Dan or Colin Kaepernick was flat out wrong on ESPN. And maybe that's already happened. I don't know. But if you flip the script entirely, right, do you get the same result? That's really the question I think some people in the back of their mind might be thinking about.
Yes.
And I don't know the answer to that.
Yes. No, you don't. I could tell you probably don't.
Well, it's double-sided, but we can also ask ourselves. It is double-sided, but we can ask ourselves, like, okay, I think we would all probably lean and fall back into the, hey, we want free speech category. And if you do lean and fall back without bias and being principled about free speech, then you shouldn't, like, I don't want to say you shouldn't disagree with Colin Kaepernick. That's not true. But you shouldn't have an issue with what he's doing. You shouldn't have an issue with what Dominique Foxworth is doing either. It's free speech. Right. It's free speech. Like, why are you so upset? Why are you so upset?
And like,
I think there is. Caleb's right when he says what he says, because there probably is a double standard because of the society we live in and the commentary that there is. But there's also context to it, right? It's like, so I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying. I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Well, it just seems to me that
it's tricky.
What was that?
It's tricky. But I think to make it untricky, you say let people say what they want, whether it's Clay Travis or Colin Kaepernick or Dominic. That's where you can say, okay, we can remove the tricky by just saying Clay Travis be you, Dominique Foxworth be you, Colin Kaepernick be you. Are you hurting anyone? You're not. Then be.
I'm not. I'm the people who want to disagree with this and say like, oh, it's a dog whistle, or oh, he's trying to dunk on Trump folks or whatever. Like, okay, that's fine. If you want to complain about that, that's fine. If you want to complain that the culture leans left at the current moment, then that's fine. But if you want to say that Dominique Foxworth should be fired and he should be taken off of ESPN's payroll,
that's cancel culture.
And
that's cancel culture.
Because like that's where I want to go. Tell you to go fuck yourself, because I may not. I take a little. I would say I get where Dominique Foxworth is coming from. I think he could have said it better. But the moment that you're like, wow, get rid of him, we should fire him, it's like you're the problem. You are part of the problem.
I want to be clear about Clay Travis. I don't think he said get rid of Dominique Foxworth at all. I don't think he said that.
No, I'm talking more about
you're right,
stuff that I was hearing.
Sure. Yeah.
Because like you could argue that this is kind of a dog whistle, but he's more addressing like a culture war thing rather than like strictly a race thing. It's more, I don't know. Do you get what I mean? It's not explicitly race. It's more of the culture war. And this is why, people like the Mark Dices and the Steven Crowders of the world are people who would probably talk about this story, because it's like, oh, well, look, And again, like, yes, you're right. If you flipped the script, if you flipped the races, if you flipped the conversation, there would be more outrage and probably more action would be taken. Like, the culture at the moment is left-leaning. At the moment, it is.
I would say the culture wars tend to lean left in certain ways.
As far as what's allowed.
Sure, I agree with that. But
yeah.
I don't think society leans left. I think the culture wars narrative is what it is. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And I actually watched a video.
By the way, we have 80,000 more problems in the fucking culture war, people.
I know.
Go ahead, Chip.
Well, I'd rather just get rid of the whole fucking culture war together. Could we just pass some legislation about, like, maybe fixing healthcare? But anyways, that's beside the point. Since we're here talking about culture war bullshit.
Right.
I don't know. It's just
Can I actually have another? So I went to Clay Travis. I went to Clay Travis's Twitter, and so I saw this happen before I even saw this tweet. So let me give you guys the context. So Clemson and Ohio State played a national champion or a college football semifinal game yesterday. Who gives a shit? They played a game yesterday. It was football. The Clemson quarterback is a long-haired, baby-faced guy who has not a lot of facial hair. It's very troubling.
Trevor
He
Lawrence.
started to correct. It's Trevor Lawrence. Yes. Caleb knows things. I'm trying to set Chad up too. Anyways, so
thank you.
He's a baby-faced guy. He started to grow a little bit of what I will actually admit is an ugly mustache. That boy should shave it. So he's in his post-game interview, and here in the COVID era, you can't do post-game interviews in person. They just bring everyone on a call, and they ask them questions. Someone didn't mute their mic, and it was a woman who commented on an unmuted mic how unfortunate his mustache was and how ugly it was. Yeah, right.
Sure.
So,
quality.
What did Trevor Lawrence and everybody do in that moment? I watched this clip earlier today. They laughed it off, and he moved past it. No big deal.
Sure.
Clay Travis tweets, listen, what if a male journalist ripped a female athlete for her appearance on an unmuted mic? So these, yeah, right. Dude, but once again, he's not wrong with what he's saying.
He's not wrong, but
it's culture war bullshit.
It's like, I didn't have anything to be upset about today. Here's my thing. Let me tweet about this.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah,
it's culture war nitpicking, man.
It is, and I absolutely think Clay Travis, even though he's not wrong, I think he's in the wrong for tweeting this because Trevor Lawrence laughed it off. He's the one that got made fun of, not you. Trevor Lawrence laughed it off and moved past it.
Yeah.
Like, even though your point is what it is, it has nothing to do with what you're talking about.
I agree.
You hit the nail right on the head, Chad. You picked something today to be upset about. Clay Travis is pushing up. He left Fox Sports. He's trying to start his own website, which I respect the hustle on that. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I don't even have to finish that, huh? I do respect the hustle because Clay Travis is trying to build his own brand, and I do respect that hustle. But I don't appreciate what you're doing here.
And we've talked about this before because it's like the quickest way to build a following online with so many voices, it's a sea of voices, is to be outrageous or outraged, to find where like the hot spots are and sort of just splash around in that a little bit and then duck out, you know what I mean? Like you have to say controversial things, you have to be on the forefront, you have to create controversy even. That's a good way to do it. Like that's exactly what he was doing right there. I mean, I don't know how much attention that was getting before he explicitly made a comment about it, but it's because he knows that like he could grab some attention there, and there's some people who would, and again, he's not necessarily wrong, so there are people who would agree with that sentiment, and they're like, oh, why is nobody else saying this? So it's like, I get that you're driving traffic, but...
Well, what does that say about us? I mean, I think, Cyril, you talked about it earlier. Maybe you did, Chad. I can't remember. I apologize. What does that say about us as a culture, that the thing that drives listens, the thing that drives clicks, and the things that drive, what produces money or advertising revenue is outrageous content, is outrageous bullshit. And I feel like it's gotten to the point where the whole goal for the media empires that be, right, ESPN or Fox Sports or CNN or Fox News or CNBC or whoever it is, right, it's all about how can I cram a 5 to 10 second media bite into a controversial thing that people need to click and find out what the hell's going on. And that is the driver behind a lot of this horseshit.
Yeah.
What I appreciate about listening to podcasts like what we're trying to do here is that hopefully you can tear it apart. You can go long form. You can go a lot more nuanced and figure out what the fuck the hell is going on. Otherwise, you're stuck in this ridiculous cycle of soundbite news bullshit.
Yes.
Ready for your weekly Cyril hot take?
Let's go.
I think
let's go, boy.
I think that what that tells you about human beings and society is that we're not going to make it in the long run.
Damn.
Because you're so addicted to garbage. You're so and that leaks in every part of life, even the parts of life where you need to be serious. Like, oh hey, 3,700 people died the other day. I'm anti-mask. It's like, Jesus Christ, like. I think it's a hot take. I understand, but
I was just gonna say,
it's a part of
I'm optimistic that these are just growing pains of the information age. I'm hoping that that's the case, but of course we'll see. I don't know.
I used to be optimistic about that. I don't know is my answer now. Yeah, I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know.
I think there's always a spike to the negative before an eventual positive shift. And the reason why I say that is because when it comes to large business and corporations, it is easier to throw the throttle down on some sort of new information or technology to the extent that is ridiculous. For example, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., all the social media sites. To throw the hammer down, throw the throttle down as hard and as fast as you can, but eventually, right, papers come out, science comes out, people start understanding a little bit more, and this takes decades.
It does.
I mean, think about the effect of radiation. When radiation was first invented, I'm pretty sure it was a female that invented it or was on the path to inventing it. These motherfuckers are just X-raying their shit all the time just because fuck it, why not? It wasn't until the 60s or 70s that they were like, hey man, you should put a lead vest on before you do that.
Just to be clear, she didn't. She discovered how to explain radiation. She didn't invent.
Who was it?
You know what I'm saying?
Drop on that
so Marie Curie was the one who was. She worked a lot directly with. Yeah, she worked.
Hey, shout out to Rebel Girls books. I read that to my daughter all the time. That was in there.
Oh, is she in there?
Let's go, dude.
Yeah, she actually. Nobody can. Her corpse is sealed in a lead tomb because her body is so radioactive. Because she just openly handled all of this radioactive material while she was studying it, and she literally died for her craft. It's pretty wild. But you don't know until you know.
What did people start using lead vests for X-rays?
Yeah, when they saw her get real weirdly sick all of a sudden after handling all this glowing shit. What's that?
I don't think they started doing it then because they're like, oh man, that's how she
No,
died.
they didn't. They didn't, but like her death was part of the, jigsaw puzzle that they were like, yo, these glowing rocks, maybe don't stand so close to them. And they're like, oh yeah, maybe. So I don't know how we got into Marie Curie, but it's a beautiful thing.
1950s is when we started using lead vests.
Yeah, we really forget
Marie
how much
died
we've learned.
In 1906, my guy.
Yeah.
Almost all like 44 years of, don't worry about it.
Yeah, but tell me why they started looking into lead. Because they were like, yo, that first lady who's handling a lot of this glowing shit, she died mysteriously and quickly. Like, maybe there's something we're missing here.
No, I don't think that's true. I think she died, and then like 1,000 people died handling the same shit. After 1001, they're like, man, guys, maybe we should look at this.
They're like, yo,
I take the same like thought process when it comes to any other technology. And the biggest one, Cyril, to your point, is, the social media, the information age, if you will. It's going to take a couple more decades before we figure out how to use it properly.
Yeah, that's where I'm at optimistically, but again, we'll see.
Yeah, that's fair.
I just don't.
I see where Cyril's coming from, though. I definitely understand the negative.
Oh, believe me, I get the nihilism, boy. It's gross out there.
I think an advanced intelligent life on this earth, aka human beings, would have destroyed themselves long ago, if not for the ability to start to figure out their surroundings, meaning technology. Technology has done so much more social justice than anybody has ever done ever. So maybe technology saves humanity, but nah, we'll see. We'll see.
I've say nah, and then we'll see.
I've always said the biggest thing that helps the least among us is technology. Like, and I guess I've never thought about this. In a way, it does help everybody in society. So as the poor get lifted, so does the rich get richer. Yeah. So that's its own thing. But
you can also
true. Like, yeah,
you could also argue that the tech in part is driving our demise. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
Right.
Is it driving the demise, or is it starting to broaden the gap between the have and the have not? Like when I saw everybody tweeting about $600 versus $2,000, I literally thought of Marie Antoinette, like let them eat cake.
Yeah.
That's what I thought of when I was.
Pretty sure that was trending on Twitter.
Incredibly enough, like typical conservative leaning areas of the internet, like we're all about 2K checks, too. So yeah, it's weird times. I thought that was socialism, but
I mean, if they can fork up billions of dollars for corporations that should have no fucking problem getting funding from a bank to make it to the next pay period,
there's you're absolutely right. There's
I
more
think
than that. There's more than that argument to make.
Stop. Protection. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Protection should stop, in my opinion, right now. If you have 499 employees or less. If you have less than 400 or at or less than 499, then we will do things to protect your payroll and whatnot. Because to me, that would be considered, relatively speaking, small business.
Yes, I agree.
Anything above 500, you're on your own.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a lot of people who may lean right who supported the 2K checks because they are looking at a pandemic and they're being realistic about the situation. What does that mean? That means if we need to fight a pandemic, we do need to do things where we're shutting things down in a certain way. And when the government says, or any entity says, you need to shut down for the safety, I get it. But the same government needs to make sure that they're protecting all the things everybody's built. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it needs to be both things. It's broken when it's only you have to shut down. Oh, I told you to shut down. I'm not going to help you. That's when it's broken. It's like, are you fucking insane? Like, and the same, and I get triggered. This is off topic, but I get triggered by this too. When people say, just open the economy, it'll be normal. No, it won't. People are scared. People are fucking scared.
Yeah,
They're not going to go out and shop and eat the same fucking way they used to. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've said that so many times. These people who are like, well, the lockdowns, Democrats, they're destroying the economy. People are actually worried about the virus. You get that, right?
Correct.
Like, if restaurants were open like normal right now, I wouldn't be eating out nearly as much as I did when things were normal.
Right.
Like, that's just a natural response to a pandemic. So,
you can go to a restaurant right now. And when's the last time you sat down at a restaurant?
It's been months.
Me?
It was midsummer, probably.
Yeah, it was summer.
When numbers were real low.
Same here.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah. We are wildly getting off base here, but it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if you guys wanted to have what's your final thoughts on because for me this is, he could have worded it better. I kind of get where he's coming from. It's a little too deep in the culture war for me to actually give a shit about this, and ultimately this guy can say whatever he wants to say, and I'm not gonna gripe too much at it, but
I agree. I would say that he could have worded it better, but I'm not going to hold him to that hardcore. I don't, like you said, I don't care. He can say what he wants. I would say that on the other side of it, from the Clay Travis perspective, I don't even blame you for having the opinion you had. I just don't think you should have made it a thing. It smells like you're trying to stir something up by making it a thing. If you kept it inside your mind, whatever, dog. You talk to your friends about it, whatever, dog. The fact that you try to make it a thing smells like shit. Yeah, that's all.
It does. Caleb, any?
No, I think I summed mine up pretty well. And that was, when it comes to sports commentary, I get that that's your place. The problem with entering that type of comment into the sports commentary is that at the end of the day, you're an analyst. And to me, as a sports fan, I feel like your view is now tainted whenever you talk about the Buffalo Bills because you've admitted the fact that you have a bias.
Sure.
And from an employer perspective, if I'm ESPN, I'm going, hey, I don't really care what you say, but if you're impacting your ability to be a sports analyst, what are you here for?
Yeah,
I agree. I would say the same thing about Clay Travis too.
When you look at Bomani Jones, or Cyril just told me Dan Levitard is no longer part of ESPN, but there were a few other people like Jamel Hill, like they hard put the axe on people who were doing that type of commentary. I think there's a place for it. I think there's absolutely a place where I appreciate people's different perspectives, whether it's racial, whether it's gender, because for me, as a white guy, like I don't fucking know what it's like to be a black guy. I don't know what it's like to be gay, playing sports. I have no fucking idea. So I think there's absolutely a place for it.
To be fair,
as an analyst, when you go on the flagship shows for ESPN as a sports analyst, you should probably stay in that space unless ESPN can carve out a nice little area for you, like on Bomani.
Yeah, and
it's not a political podcast either. Those are two guys that work for ESPN. That's I think what Caleb's point is, and he's right.
I get that, but to me, like the place to do it probably isn't a podcast format because it's much more casual, laid back.
That's true.
And like as long and like again, I don't know either of these gentlemen, but listening to them talk about football the way they did when it wasn't racially tinged, they seem like they know what they're talking about. Like the whole conversation seems to me to be limited to like the weird Twitter stuff that people get up to today, which I can't even begin to relate with because I don't do that stuff.
Look, Dominique, say what you want to say, and on the other side of the coin, Clay, say what you want to say. It gets weird when you're calling each other out. Like that's when it gets weird when you're
calling for people to be fired.
When you're not holier than thou. It's like you want to say what you want to say because you feel a right type of way and he feels a left type of way. Go for it. But when you call each other out, that's when it's like, all right, what are you doing? Like you're doing the same shit. So,
yeah. All right.
There you Appreciate you, boys.
It's the Three Bros podcast. Commenting
You heard it here first. Bills Packers Super Bowl.
That's right.
Final score 60-3. Packers win.
No.
I'll put money on those. No, God bless.
No, I'm not.
I hope not.
For anybody that made it all the way to the end of the podcast, please post a subscription, and if you want to or are interested, follow us at 3 Bros Pod on Twitter as well.
Very nice. Thanks for listening.